Give one group of people the treatment and one group of people nothing, and then look at the differences between the two groups of people.
If you've been following us for a while, you know that at Hope for HIE, we are deeply, deeply involved in research, clinical trials. We've been consulting on study design with many families participating in focus groups. And so I want to ask the audience on this one, because the point that is being made, and this is getting like the national headlines in the US about placebo-controlled trials, and this one is specific to vaccines right now. However, when we're talking to regulatory, so FDA, EMA, the Canadian Research Regulatory Agency, any of the other ones around the world, and we have meetings to talk about how can we break down barriers and make things more feasible to get the research that we need. There's a lot of talk about right now, if we have a randomized controlled study, you have a placebo arm and you have an intervention arm, right? And so if you think about the history of neonatal clinical trials, and especially HIE, for cooling, we had those that got cooled and those that didn't get cooled. And actually, we had really good data on like those that didn't get cooled and what their outcomes were, right? So with the interventional studies for this, there's a lot of people talking about, can we use a surrogate placebo arm, arms that have been used before in clinical trials. Cooling is the standard of care. So like the HEAL study, beautifully done, had hundreds and hundreds of HIE babies enrolled that got cooling as standard of care, and then had EPO as the adjunctive that was added. So my question to our families is, would you rather know that your kid is getting the intervention, the investigational medication, or two, have a placebo-controlled trial with that and be randomized into getting the intervention or not getting the intervention? Knowing that we have data and a surrogate control arm that we could use, which means this would enroll babies faster and potentially in a bigger cohort. And thinking through that all of these trials go through rigorous safety protocols to get to neonatal clinical trials, meaning they have to have really strong preclinical, they have to look at the pharmacokinetics, meaning how it works and the mechanism of action of how it works with the baby's brain and with the baby's body, or child's if we're doing pediatric trials. And then you have to also do it in healthy adults, and then look for safety signals in that. And then you're doing, a lot of these are dose escalation trials too, of finding the right dose. And like, so taking out the control arm and doing a dose escalation trial. What are your thoughts? What would you prefer? And if you're not an HIE family or a NICU family or someone who has children that you would look at enrolling in clinical trials, and you are a provider or a researcher, I am curious what you think about, because this is something that is very talked about with ethical issues. And, I'm in lots of meetings that are talking about different types of consent, different types of trial design. And so I'm really, really curious what the researchers and clinicians that are attached and watching us on this platform have to say about it too.